Alright, so let's start our journey with Python objects by introducing our first one. And for this I've picked a very simple object that is intuitive to understand, and that is the square. And what I have open here is an Python Scratch file that I'm going to demonstrate the usage of a square object. So the first thing we're going to do is create our own variable, and we call it mySquare. And I'm doing this very much step by step here, but I've already prepared a class called square. And basically what I've done here is call my own class square and assign it to the left hand side to this variable. Now, what is a class? What is an object? So square basically defines a template, and mySquare is one concrete example of a square. So if you recall that when we talked about the trees and the ice creams and the cars, when you talk about a particular thing, we talk about objects. When you talk about a category, that is the class. Now we'll get back to that later, but let's see now what we can do with our variable and what is defined in there. So I'm going to do this again, mySquare dot. And I see I have two different properties here, size and color. And if I would just type that and try to print, okay, so now I have something called mySquare.size, which prints out 10 or returns 10. Size here is an attribute, just like in the real world. If you would cut out a box or a square or something, you could define that size. And now in the Python world, we have this same type of property called size. And I do that, or recall it, by typing the variable name dot the attribute. Let's see the other one. Okay, none. Well, we're gonna see why that is none in a second, but the idea here is we have our own variable, mySquare, and on that there is several attributes which we can use and learn about this object. Right, so before we create the second object, why was color none? Well, the answer to that is for the same reason size has the value 10. And the secret behind that is something we'll look at in the next lesson, but that is something already defined in this factory, how new values will be selected or assigned to any new object. Now let's create a second one. I'm gonna call it my second square. And the same syntax here. Now, what will happen if I print the same things? Okay, 10, none, 10, none. So these objects seem to print out the same type of values for these properties. And this goes back to what a class really is. It is just a template, it's a factory from which we can create objects. And each object that will come out from that factory will look the same. However, are they copies of each other? Are they clones, or are they just separate with different values? Like if you would cut out a paper and create two different squares with the same size, they would still be two different squares, right? Okay, so let's print out the ID of these squares. This one ends in 16, this one ends in 60. So they are different internally, yet they have the same type of attributes. And we're going to see why that is in the next video. Okay, in the next lesson we're gonna take a look at what goes inside a class and how to customize the creation of an object. We look at something called constructors and some of the building blocks of a Python file that contains a class.